Today's pod is gonna be lit. And not just because Washington is in the playoffs and are NFC East champions, because that's a huge part of why this pod's gonna be lit. But no, I've got a lot to say. There's been a lot of shit out there about how we won the game and how the Eagles disgraced the NFL. Oh, we gonna have us a hell of a conversation today. And the draft order has been released, and we now have the playoffs set. So, you know what? Let the games begin. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 126th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Man, when I tell you, first of all, Happy New Year! You see that 21 up there in the corner? God, it feels good to get rid of 2020, man. And I'm not one of those guys that's like, oh, we need to finally get out of 2020. Can we give 2020 back? I wasn't one of those people, but man, I'm going to tell you, 2020 was rough. It was rough. A couple of haymakers landed from 2020, and some of us didn't know if we were going to get back up off the canvas or not, but we're here. We made it, and I can't be more elated to see the calendar turn from one year to the next. And so here we are, brand new year, same old pod, same Louie T giving you the shit that you love to hear, and we're going to have a lot of that today. First and foremost, celebrate Washington football team, NFC East champions. The champ is here. That's right. We here. We in the building. However, not only did Washington clinch, but a lot of teams had an opportunity to clinch on Sunday and did. Cleveland, who hadn't been in the postseason since 2003. Tampa Bay, we had already clinched last week, but that's a drought that was since 2007. So we're going to have some teams that aren't accustomed to being in the postseason in this playoffs. It should be a really good field, and I'm excited about this field. I can't speak for anybody else out there. I'm really excited about this playoff field that we're gonna have in this new format with 3 wild card games on each of the first 2 days of the playoffs on Saturday and Sunday, a triple header. I mean, it's gonna be awesome. 440, or I think it's 105, 440, and 815 if I'm not mistaken. So going to be plenty of football for us to consume over a 2-day span. Should be a ton of fun. And we'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. We got a bunch. Today is Black Monday, unfortunately. And so a number of vacancies have arisen. And so 6 coaching vacancies and 7 GM vacancies, which we don't usually see that many GM vacancies. So, you know, we sat here and we mulled over how many coaches would get fired, and there's still a couple of coaching situations to be resolved, whether the Bengals are going to remain with their head coach. The hell is his name? I forgot his damn name. I can see his face. I can't think of his damn name, but there are about 1 or 2 more teams that have a decision to make on whether to retain their current coaching staff, alter the coaching staff but not get rid of the head coach, or get rid of the whole thing altogether and find someone new to lead their organization in any event. We'll talk about that here in a second as well. But as I told you, this is a jam-packed show. We'll talk about that the Eagles situation a little bit later on. That really got under my skin, not just because I was the beneficiary of it, but people are just up in arms, and I got a lot to say about it. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But before we do any of that, how was your new year? How did you bring it in? Hopefully you stayed safe. I saw some pictures of, gatherings that looked very, very unsanitary. Hopefully you weren't a part of any of those, but if you were, hopefully you remained safe. If you didn't, I hope you're feeling well today on January the 4th. In any event, let's jump into the Gem Droppin Session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Thinking a little bit. And so, I wanted to start with these coaching vacancies. There are 6 available head coaching spots. We've heard rumors, and this is what's going to happen when it comes to coaching vacancies, GM vacancies. There are going to be plenty of rumors. Now, I can't really speak to the GM vacancies. I don't know a lot of these guys that are being talked about for these vacancies, and this assistant GM and this play, college scout, and player of personnel, vice president. I don't know any of these guys, so I can't sit here and talk about this guy would be a great candidate or that guy. But I can speak to the head coaching vacancies. We have watched these guys do their jobs, and so I want to start with that. And I will have a little something to say about the GM vacancies, but it won't be what guy would make a great fit here or there. It's just, hey, how attractive of a job is this, and so forth and so forth. So let's start with the guys that got fired first. It is Black Monday, and there were some tough decisions to be made. There were a few that weren't all that tough. And Zach Taylor is the name of that damn Bengals head coach. He's still in limbo, doesn't know if he's going to be fired or not. Normally, if you're going to get rid of a guy, you get rid of him on Monday. But, we've seen situations where teams and, an organization and a coach come together, they talk, and maybe you say, hey, you can stay, but you got to find a new defensive coordinator and a new offensive coordinator, or you have to go. And they say, no, I'm not parting ways. Just like a few years ago we saw with Mike Munchak in Tennessee, where he's like, I'm not getting rid of any of my coaches. If you don't want them, you don't want me. They say, okay, fine, K-Ass then. So we'll see what happens with Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. Should be interesting. I don't think he's going to get fired. I think they're going to give him one more shot, as they did with Vic Fangio in Denver. And you know what? I'm happy. I wanted Vic Fangio to get another opportunity. But, Doug Marrone was interesting because I thought it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to be fired. It took them a while to make that decision, but they did make it this morning. Doug Marrone out as Jacksonville Jaguars head coach. They'll always be 2017, right? Right. Adam Gase was an easy decision. He was the first coach to be fired after the season met its conclusion. He was fired last night, right before Sunday Night Football. So we knew about Adam Gase last night, and everyone knew that was going to take place. There were still some people that were thinking, hey, is this guy actually going to keep his job? Hell no. Not because the Jets finished up the season, winning 2 out of their final 3 games. No, they still stink, and he still stinks as a head coach, and they needed to go in a different direction. Now, the big question with the Jets is, what are you going to do with the quarterback position? There was a rumor that was out there that their general manager is going to make a big move this offseason. And it's either going to revolve around trading Sam Darnold so that they can make space for the new quarterback that they're going to select at number 2, or it's going to be trading out of 2 because they're not taking a quarterback and they want King's ransom for the number 2 pick to come up and get a Justin Fields or a Trevor Lawrence. We all assume Trevor Lawrence is going number 1. I don't care what happened on Saturday night. What was it, Saturday? I think it was Friday night. Nobody cares about that. It was a great performance by Fields. Did he outplay Lawrence? Sure he did. Absolutely he did. Doesn't matter. Doesn't erase the body of work that Trevor Lawrence has put forth. And so I still think Lawrence is going to go number 1. Don't think there's a real decision there to be made. And I think at 2, the Jaguar or the Jets feel really good about taking Justin Fields, if in fact that's the route they decide to go. Joe Douglas has been rumored to be looking to make a blockbuster deal, whether it be for the number 2 pick or for Sam Darnold. We'll see which of the 2 actually transpires. But Adam Gase is out as Jets head coach nevertheless. Adam Patricia obviously fired in season for Detroit, so that vacancy has become fully open. Darrell Bevell had taken over as the interim head coach. He will not be retained. They'll be looking for a new guy in Detroit, not only for their head coaching vacancy, but they also have a GM vacancy. Both of those guys, Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, both were tied at the hip. Both were fired earlier this season, so they have both a head coaching vacancy and a general manager vacancy. Same with the Jacksonville Jaguars. In Atlanta, obviously, Dan Quinn was fired earlier this season. During the season, in comes Raheem Morris. He promptly then wins 3 in a row. It should have been 4, but nonetheless, gave them a shot, but they still couldn't win games down the stretch. And so even though there has been a huge ground swelling for Raheem Morris to keep that job, I don't think it's going to happen in Atlanta. They're going to look for new, fresh blood in Atlanta. We'll see what they decide to do. And just like in Detroit, And in Jacksonville, there is not only a head coaching vacancy, but there's also a general manager vacancy to fill as well. Bill O'Brien was fired. First coach to go this season was Bill O'Brien of the Houston Texans. And so they have always had a general manager opening. Remember, Bill O'Brien was their de facto general manager that allowed him to tear that organization to shreds, essentially gut it from the inside out. However, he's gone, and now and Romeo Crennel had taken his place. You knew Romeo Crennel wasn't going to be their permanent head coach, so they've got to find a solution in Houston, not only as a head coach, but also in their general manager opens position and vacancy as well. And then the big one was Anthony Lynn. Was he going to be retained? The Chargers finished up winners of 4 straight down the stretch, and there were a lot of people advocating for Anthony Lynn to keep his job, and then there were, I think, more people on the other side saying, hey, we love Anthony Lynn as a guy, but he's got to go. There's just too many mistakes in game that allow these losses to transpire. And ultimately, the Chargers organization, Tom Telesco, Dean Spanos and company agreed, and they moved on from Anthony Lynn. And so the Chargers now will be looking for a brand new head coach. And so those are your 6 head coaching vacancies. Your 7 GM vacancies reads like this: Jags, Panthers, Lions, Falcons, Texans, Broncos. John Elway had his right-hand man retire, so now that opens up a vacancy in Denver. And Washington football team doesn't currently have a GM. A lot of people think, and there are a lot of speculation this offseason, that Ron Rivera will bring someone from the outside instead of promoting from within. We'll see how that situation is rectified, but the 6 head coaching vacancies is what I really want to focus in on. Jags, Jets, Lions, Falcons, Texans, Chargers. There's a rumor already that is sprung that Urban Meyer, Herb, as I like to call him, is interested in the Jacksonville job. He's a Florida guy, and there's a really intriguing dynamic there with the number 1 overall pick. Herb is probably going to want some power, some control over personnel. In Jacksonville, Sheed Khan has had control over the roster, and he says he's not looking to give that up. So we'll see if there's a dynamic there, if there's a little bit of a power struggle, or if you will have a situation where a coach will say, you know what, I don't want any parts of that. I don't want my owner meddling around my roster. We'll see what happens. And then there's also a rumor that he wants $12 million per. Remember what we were saying. Now, again, it's not the same. It's not apples to apples. When the Panthers made the move last year to go to the collegiate ranks and go get Matt Rule and pay him a boatload of money, which they did. But Herb wanting 12 is a lot of. Even John Gruden's not making that much money. John signed a 10 for 100. But that's 10 mil per. This man is, and again, he's done it at a high level at the collegiate ranks. He hasn't done it here in the NFL. So I don't know. $12 million is a lot of money to be paying a head coach that has health issues that may only give you 2 or 3 years. And as we know, if I'm hiring a guy like Herb and I'm going to pay him a bunch of money, there's going to be a couple of stipulations in this contract. And one is, I'm getting out of this thing if you got to retire early for whatever reason. You quit, you retire, I'm not paying you any more money. Okay? The only way you get the rest of your bread is if I fire you. So, they'd have to be a few stipulations in there because Herb's health just isn't right, and I told you, he's got bad nerves. I don't want to see him on an NFL sideline personally, and college is not the NFL. It's a lot different here. You got some impressionable 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. You're dealing with grown-ass men now, so it's a totally different game. Football is football when it comes to coaching from the aspect of X's and O's. But, you're dealing with a different age group now, so, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if Herb's cut out for the NFL life or not. But, you get that itch, and I think he's got that itch. And we'll see what happens with Herb and if he takes a job or not. But when you look at all of these openings, there are a couple that make a ton of sense. Like Brian Daboll, Bills offensive coordinator, went to high school with the Chargers GM Tom Telesco up in New York. And so there's a direct correlation and connection. Now, were they friends? Did they know each other? We love to do this whole, hey, these guys went to school together. Are they friends? Did they know each other in high school? That's the real question. If the answer to that is yes, and they go way back, then yeah, okay, maybe there is something that you can, a direct correlation and a line you can draw there. But if they just went to the same school, but they never really crossed paths or they weren't friends, then who gives a shit if they went to the same high school? That doesn't matter. So we'll see what happens. More likely than not, the connection that everyone's drawing makes sense and it's relevant because they probably were friends in high school and they do go way back. And if anybody could use a guy like Brian Daboll, it's the Chargers, because look at what happened with Josh Allen. Look at the body type of Josh Allen. Look at the cannon that Josh Allen has. And then look at the quarterback the Chargers currently have. Is there not a easier comparison? Like, hey, 6'5", 6'6", big athletic kid that can sling it. And look what Brian Daboll did for this one over here. And we got another one that's ready and dying for someone to come coach him up. It just makes a ton of sense. It makes too much sense almost. So, that's the one that everybody's pointing to in Los Angeles with the Chargers. Now, with the Texans, they've already been rumored to be interested in Eric Bieniemy. They're going to give him a look-see. And again, that makes a ton of sense. Why? Because of the dynamic in Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, and what he's been able to be a part of in Kansas City with that offense. And then you look at Deshaun Watson and you say, look, if you can do half of what you've done in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, this offense will be ridiculous. A lot of people don't understand just how good of a season. I brought this up on the podcast last week or the week before that. Just how good of a season Deshaun Watson is having. When we had the MVP discussion, I said, a lot of you don't pay attention to Deshaun Watson because he's on a losing team and they're not having a great season, but he's having a great season. They don't suck because of him. And he ended up leading the league in passing yards. He tried to put that team on his back. Unfortunately, he can't play offense and defense. So if you find the right guy to kind of harness all of that energy, get the right players in place, and coach up that offense with Deshaun Watson pulling the strings, they could be a really dangerous team in Houston. I mean, he's out here throwing the football to Justin Watson and almost slaying some of these teams in the AFC South. Had the Titans on the ropes again with the likes of Kiki QT and Justin Watson, okay? And yeah, I get it. Brandon Cooks is still out there, but I'll tell you what, Pharaoh Brown was having a day yesterday with Deshaun Watson pulling the strings. So if you get the right guy in there, and maybe Eric Bieniemy is that guy in Houston, it'll change things significantly. So I think that's another one of those jobs that you look and you say, okay, maybe that's the direction they may go in. Don't forget about some of these college coaches now. Ryan Day was a name that kept popping up. Then there was a rumor that he wasn't interested in taking any NFL interview. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, there's the Northwestern coach and the job he's done. And he is interested in taking NFL interviews. So you have to consider some of these college coaches as well for some of these vacancies. Lincoln Riley was hot last year. Is he still hot now? Does he still feel like the NFL isn't something he really wants to stick his toe into? I don't know. We'll see. But, these are teams that are desperate, looking for fresh blood. And maybe these are some guys that they will look to interview during this process. I've always said that, and it's amazing because all we talk about are offensive guys. Urban Meyer, offensive guy. Brian Daboll, offensive guy. Eric Bieniemy, offensive guy. We don't talk much about defensive-minded head coaches because that's not what's in vogue. But when you look around at teams that turn it around faster than others, usually it's the defensive-minded coaches that come in, like in Buffalo with Sean McDermott, it's split because in L.A. with Sean McVay, offensive-minded guy, and that's kind of the path that everybody's trying to go down. Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland, offensive-minded guy. In Green Bay, Matt LaFleur, offensive guy, but they're all kind of from that same Shanahan tree. So you kind of looking for a guy like that, or you looking for just an offensive-minded guy to marry with your young quarterback if you have to draft one or if you already have one in place. But if you're looking for, if I'm Atlanta, I don't want an offensive guy. I want a defensive guy. I want Matt Eberflus. I want somebody like that. I want, in Detroit, the name that keeps coming up is the defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers, Robert Saleh. He's another guy that is interesting in Atlanta. That's the kind of guy I'm looking for. Matt Eberflus, Indianapolis Colts defensive coordinator, Robert Saleh, somebody like that, because offensively, if you feel good about the Falcons and where they are with Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and all the other parts, Hayden Hurst and all the other guys that you have on that roster that you're going to continue to add to, you don't worry about the offense. You can score points. That's not really the issue. The issue is, can you get this defense to play consistently, and can you get them to play better in clutch and crucial stretches of the football game and not give it up? And for me, I would be looking to tap into the defensive talent that we have and get them to play the kind of football that's going to help me win, because I think the offense is already there. With a veteran group on the offensive side of the football, I know that they can put up points. So I'd be looking for a defensive guy in Atlanta, personally myself. But we'll see what they decide to do. It's not a foregone conclusion that they'll be looking for a defensive-minded guy, because Dan Quinn himself was a defensive-minded guy and it didn't work. So you may be looking to go to the other end of the spectrum and say, hey, we had a defensive-minded guy, he didn't get it done, now we want to go the offensive route. I think the better option would be, let's go with a defensive-minded guy, because Dan didn't get it done, but maybe this guy will. Maybe that 4-3, cover 3 kind of defense wasn't exactly what fit this defense. Maybe you bring in a cover 2 guy, or maybe Robert Saleh's version of the cover 3 is a better fit for this defense. Whatever the case may be, we'll see. The Falcons have an interesting decision to make, because again, what do you do with Matt Ryan this offseason? Is he a part of your future, or isn't he? Because when you look at this list, the Falcons have the number 4 pick in the draft. They are sitting right there with a chance to hit the reset button. So if you're the Atlanta Falcons, is Matt Ryan even a part of your future? Is Julio Jones even a part of your future? Calvin Ridley, definitely a part of your future. But outside of that, Todd Gurley isn't necessarily a part of your future. There are a lot of questions in Atlanta, and we don't have the answers right now. So that's an interesting job, to say the least. I talked about the Lions job already. I really think Robert Saleh is going to end up being the next head coach of the Detroit Lions when it's all said and done. I think that's the direction that they go in. For too long, the Detroit Lions have ignored the defensive side of the football. I know Matt Patricia was a defensive-minded guy. They tried to get it right. He wanted to make them the Detroit Patriots. That's where they failed. I think they want to go in a different direction. And it starts, I think, with the defense, because much like I said with Detroit or with Atlanta, I look at that as a similar situation. Veteran offense with a veteran quarterback with a bunch of weapons. Now, a lot of their weaponry is going to be available in free agency. Marvin Jones is 31 and a free agent. He might have been their most consistent receiver this year, at least the most healthiest. That's for damn sure. Danny Amendola, free agent, and so is Kenny Golladay. So your top 3 wide receiver targets, all free agents. You've got to bring back at least one of them, preferably Kenny Golladay, but we'll see what they decide to do. Matthew Stafford came back and gutted it out and played in another game. I was shocked to see him come back. I shouldn't be, because he's a tough guy. That's what tough guys do. But we'll see. I'm really fascinated with what the Lions decide to do, because they themselves sit there at number 7 in the draft. They could decide, much like Atlanta, to hit the reset button, move on from their veteran quarterback, get some draft capital for that guy, and start to rebuild this thing from the ground up. If you're going to do it, now's the time. You need a new GM, a new head coach. This is the time. If you're going to hit the reset button, we talked about this on the podcast already. If you're going to hit the reset button in these locales where a veteran quarterback has been manning the huddle for almost a decade now, it's time to move on. If that's what you want to do, if that's what you see in your future, There's no time like the present for these organizations because of them hitting the reset button with the head coach and the general manager. If you're going to start over, allow that GM to either succeed or fail with his guys all the way from the quarterback up. Or down, I should say. From the quarterback down. Let him succeed or fail with his guys. Give him the keys and let him drive this thing. And if he wants to drive it with a veteran quarterback like Stafford or Matt Ryan, then let him do that. But if he wants to start all over, if he wants to start anew, get the coach that wants to coach this quarterback, then let him do that as well. So, again, another interesting dynamic there in Detroit. I would go defensive coordinator. If you're going to stick with Matthew Stafford and you're just going to continue to build around, and Stafford's not 35 or 6 like Matt Ryan. Stafford's only like 32 or something like that. Like, he's still relatively young, still a lot of good football. As long as he can stay healthy, he's got good football left in him. I would go on the defensive side of the football, personally, in Detroit. But we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. And then the Jets, they're just a mess. They've got a decision to make as to who the next head coach will be. Look, a lot of their decision will pretty much be predicated on what they decide to do with Sam Darnold. And maybe the next head coach will have a lot of say-so in that. Maybe how Joe Douglas feels about Sam Darnold will have a lot to say. Remember, Joe Douglas did not draft Sam Darnold, so there is no connection, no tie there. There is no incentive for Joe Douglas to make sure that Sam Darnold works. So it wouldn't shock me if they look to move Sam Darnold and draft a quarterback that Joe Douglas is comfortable with. And again, much like in Detroit and in Atlanta, they have the ability to start anew, to start fresh. So, and in Jacksonville, we talked about that already. Got an opportunity to hire a new GM, a new head coach, and they're going to draft Trevor Lawrence, and they're going to start over. They got talent on that football team. They got DJ Chark. They got James Robinson. They have talented football players. They have Laviska Shenault. Like, this is a talented Jaguars roster. I've said this, like, David Caldwell wasn't the issue. I actually thought that his biggest failure was drafting Blake Bortles. That's why he got fired. He didn't get the quarterback position right. But when you look at Jacksonville, I've always said Jacksonville does a really good job of stockpiling talent. They draft it well. They just don't retain it. Look at all the guys that they've lost over the years for whatever reason. Jalen Ramsey, all right? Allen Robinson, for whatever reason, they draft them, they develop them, they just don't keep them. And guys run out, and some of that was due to them having Tom Coughlin there, and he was an old curmudgeon that guys couldn't wait to get away from. Dante Fowler Jr., another guy. Like, they've had talent. They drafted well there. They just don't do a great job, much like Cincinnati. I've said the same thing. They draft talented football players. They just don't do a great job of holding on to it. So, anyway, I find that to be really interesting with these head coaching vacancies. We'll really keep our eye on all of them as they're filled. We'll talk about them, the significance of them, the impact that guy will have for that organization, what it means, all of those things. We will be watching these vacancies very closely. And if any more should open, we'll talk about those and add them to the list as well. I do see a few super chats, so I do want to get to those quickly before we move on to the playoff picture. Got a couple comments. One here from Vincent Cole. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Vincent Cole, who writes, "Hey Lou, any college head coaching candidates you like this year?" I've already talked about one of them, and that's the head coaching. What is his name? I'm going to look him up real quick. I always want to call him Pat Fitzgerald in Northwestern, but I think he's gone. Let's see, though. I might have it right. Let's see. Northwestern football head coach. And it is Pat Fitzgerald. I was right. So he's a guy that is going to, I think, garner some attention this year. We'll see if he's a guy that's willing to jump to the NFL if that's something that he decides to do. I think that Lincoln Riley is still an interesting name. He's done a tremendous job developing talent and quarterbacks at the collegiate level, runs a wide open offense that seems to get guys wide open. Again, and it's college. It's not the NFL, but I think that is intriguing to some of these NFL teams. I think the Iowa State head coach, let me look his name up, is someone that I think also is starting to garner a little bit of attention because of the turnaround. At Matt Campbell is a guy that I think is starting to turn some heads, and I think some NFL coaches or NFL teams are interested in him and what he's been able to do. So that's another name that I would look at and say that he may be someone that they may try to pluck from the collegiate ranks. I don't see many college coaches making the leap. You usually, if you get one, you get one. You don't normally get two or three in any given offseason. So Matt Rule was that guy last year. I don't foresee any more than one guy, whether that guy's Herb or that guy is Pat Fitzgerald. I wouldn't even consider Herb, being that he wasn't coaching in college football for the last few years. But yeah, I mean, he would be considered a college coach. So you could get two if Herb decides to go, and Pat Fitzgerald or Matt Campbell or one of these guys gets a real sniff. However, well, what did we get? We got two last year, actually. I take that back. We got Matt Rule and we got it was one. It was two. It was one the year before, which was Cliff Kingsbury, and then last year was Matt Rule. So that's generally what you get. You get one of these college guys that someone gets a little itchy and they go scratching in the collegiate ranks. And I think you're going to see the same thing this year. The only way that it's two is if Herb decides to come back. But maybe Pat Fitzgerald is that guy. Maybe Lincoln Riley decides this is the perfect time to jump ship at Oklahoma. But I don't really see too many college guys making that leap, honestly speaking. Thank you for the super chat, Vincent Coe. Kevin the PRF, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Kevin the PRF writes, is it just me or us? Romeo Crennel, a first ballot interim head coach, Hall of Famer. Anyway, love the haters hating today. Romeo does a hell of a job when he's thrusted in. Now he's been dealt one hell of a hand. Remember he took over for the Chiefs that year when the guy shot himself in the parking lot, the linebacker. He's had to take over some really tough situations, man, as Romeo Crennel. And it was tough in Houston this year with, Bill O'Brien doing all the things that he's done. But Romeo always comes in and stabilizes things, and he did it again this year. They didn't win a bunch of games, but they were ultra competitive. So, yeah, I think he would be a first ballot interim head coach, Hall of Famer. Anyway, I love the haters hating too. I love it, man. It means you're doing something right. When you get haters, it means you're doing something. Whether it's right or wrong, you're doing something that is evoked emotion out of people. Emotion. So I love it. Got one here from my man BD Barrett Downing. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Barrett Downing, who writes, hey Lou, what do you think about the tight end in Ohio? I believe they have two. I wouldn't be able to tell you. I wouldn't be able to tell you right now. Again, I told you, give me a month or so after the season's done, and I'll be able to talk to you about all of these dudes, But right now, I've been so focused on the NFL, I can't really tell you about the college guys. King of the North, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the North writes, Alex injury, change of staff, sexual harassment stuff, name change drama, Ron's cancer, Dwayne flopping, Kyle Allen injury, 2-7, 5-2, division champs. I mean, that's our year in a nutshell. I mean, everything that could happen to one organization did happen to this organization, and somehow we were able to come out on the other side. And nobody's going to talk about that because, again, haters are going to hate. And so if you're looking for Washington apologists or you're looking for Washington praise, you're not going to find it on the major networks because those networks and those shows are headed by fans of other teams of the NFC East. Max Kellerman is a Giants fan, so you know he was probably pissed today. Stephen A. Smith is an Eagles fan, so he probably was having to defend himself. You know, again, you already know what it is with your boy over at on Fox Sports 1. I can't even remember his damn name. Skip Bayless. He's a Dallas Cowboys fan. So if you're looking in those places for some nice, kind words, you're looking in the wrong spaces, and that's fine. We division champs, and we had to endure all of that my man King of the North just eloquently brought up. All of that. We had to endure all of it, and somehow we were mentally tough enough to emerge from the NFC East wreckage as the only team to not lose double-digit games. If that's not enough, get out of my face. Thank you for that super chat, King of the North. Got another one here from Barrett Downing. Thank you for doubling up. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, BD. Greatly appreciate you. My man Barrett Downing writes, couldn't get in for nothing last night, so just showing some love, respect. I'm sorry. You know, last night was crazy. You knew it was going to be crazy before it even started. I knew it was going to be crazy. I'm glad it was crazy, though. You know, those are the types of nights I live for. So it was a lot of fun. And look forward to more of those. If we can win a game, it'll be, you thought last week was crazy. It'll be even crazier if we beat Tampa Bay on Saturday night. Walter Bonner, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Walter Bonner. All right. Let's see. I do have another super chat here. Just came in from my man Dor Gunner. Thank you for the super chat, Dor Gunner. Greatly appreciate you. Dor Gunner writes, can't wait to be at opening day next year when we add a banner. Number 4, I can only dream / saw the first 3. Thanks for keeping me up to date on my team, Lou. No doubt about it. That's what we're all here for. Hopefully we'll be allowed into the stadium at that point. It's one thing though, when it's an NFC East banner. I want one of them Super Bowl things. I want one of those things. I'll be there for that, for sure. Anyway, let's move on. Let's get to the playoff picture. And man, I got a lot to say about this. This was, to me, a really fascinating weekend of football, as we knew it would be. We talked about this last week, and I want to go through a few games that had an impact on the playoff seeding and positioning, and then we'll talk about each of these matchups, and we'll talk about all of the things that go into Wildcard Weekend. And we got plenty of time. We'll have a full slate this week, a regular normal week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday pod, so we'll have plenty of time to really dive in deep. I just want to get to the surface level of these matchups. But let's start with the first game of a Wildcard Weekend, which will be Saturday at 1:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The 7-seeded Indianapolis Colts will be taking on the number 2-seeded Buffalo Bills in the AFC. That should be one hell of a game. I think all of these matchups are ones that could go in any direction. Now, the reason this is such a fascinating matchup is because the Indianapolis Colts arguably are one of the better defenses in the AFC, in all of football. And they're going up against the hottest offense in the league right now, and it's not even close. The Chiefs right now aren't even on the same playing field as this Buffalo Bills offense right now. Hell, Matt Barkley came in the game and was throwing dimes for touchdowns in this game versus the Miami Dolphins. And that's where I want to start, is with the Buffalo Bills locking up the 2 seed. They needed to win in order to lock up the 2 seed, and they were able to do that 56-26 over the Miami Dolphins. What a shame for the Dolphins season to come to an end the way that it did. They really needed Ryan Fitzpatrick in this game. You know, and had he been available, once things started to turn south early and Tua wasn't able to execute, he would have gone to Fitzpatrick, and who knows if this thing would have turned into an old-fashioned shootout or not. But he would have at least had a shot. They never had a chance in this game. I mean, they really didn't. Buffalo came out, and the defense for the Dolphins gave them a shot in the first quarter. But after that, this thing got ugly, and it got ugly in a hurry, to the point where Josh Allen and company were done after the first half of this game. They really were looking to pull Josh Allen out in the first half, and then Isaiah McKenzie runs back a touchdown on a punt return, and then Allen comes back and throws another touchdown pass, and then they were like, okay, enough's enough. We're throwing in the towel. If you can't beat Matt Barkley and company, which they couldn't, and it got worse from there, then you don't deserve to go. And they got their asses handed to them, gave up the most points this season, did the Dolphins, at 56. And this Bills team right now, and they got Smoke back. I talked about John Brown last week and how he was coming back. And to add, to make matters worse and to add injury to insult, they just signed Kenny Stills onto their practice squad. Like, they've got an abundance of riches. If anybody can beat Kansas City, it's this Buffalo Bills team. Trust me. They're dangerous, man. Even if John Brown can't go, all they're going to do is just elevate, Kenny Stills. Like, they're in a really good spot on these Bills right now. And, what we were worried about with them earlier in the season, much like Seattle, was their defense. Well, the defense is healthy, and they're playing better. And Josh Norman had a pick 6 in this game. Like, they're playing with confidence. Matt Milano is healthy and back. My guy, the linebacker from Virginia Tech, is healthy, and he's playing at a high level. They're getting pressure on the quarterback. They're stopping the run a lot more effectively. Edmonds is his name. This Bills defense is much better than it was earlier this season. They're clicking. And so this 56-point barrage that they put to head into the postseason just gives them that much more confidence heading in. Nobody wants to play Buffalo in the AFC. I'd venture to say that if you asked a team, you gave them truth serum in the AFC and said, who do you not want to play right now? I think they'd say Buffalo before they said Kansas City. And I could be wrong there. It's still Mahomes. Still Andy Reid and company. But what Buffalo's doing right now, they're cutting through everybody like hot knife through butter. And they did it again against the Dolphins and put them out of their playoff misery on Sunday. And now you go to Indianapolis, and they had to sweat it out against Jacksonville, 28-14. And this didn't feel like a game that was going to require, some late game heroics from Indianapolis' defense and then the run game and their rookie Jonathan Taylor. This felt like an all-out ass thrashing early. It was 17-0. They were well on their way to winning this game comfortably. And then the offense for the Colts just simply went to sleep. And next thing you know, this thing is 20-14, and the Jags have every opportunity to score, and they just couldn't. And some of that, you got to give credit to this Colts defense. Some of it, you just say, what the hell is Jacksonville doing? We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Anyway, Indianapolis gets 200 and some odd yards out of Jonathan Taylor, their rookie, who needed 74 yards going into the game to rush for 1,000. He gets 220 in this game. He's been on a tear. I told you when they got him, first of all, he was my number one back in the draft. I said he had first round talent. And I said if he goes to the right team, he's going to be a star. He goes to the perfect team with a run blocking, maul you type of offensive line. I told you the only place that would have been better for him would have been Tennessee. But they already had one of those guys in Derrick Henry. They didn't need a duplicate. He goes to Indianapolis. They really put emphasis on run blocking. They've drafted offensive linemen to help them do that. And he is now there taking advantage of that offensive line. Took him a while to get comfortable, to play with confidence. Now he feels like he's back at Wisconsin again, and he's showing it. Some of those moves he put in the hole on those Jacksonville Jaguar defenders, nasty. They've got it going on the ground now, and if Phillip Rivers and that offensive passing attack can keep up and not turn it over, Indianapolis is going to be tough to deal with. And if anybody can slow down, if there's one team in the AFC capable of slowing down Buffalo, it's going to be the Indianapolis Colts. That's why this matchup on paper looks so appetizing as our entree to get Wildcard Weekend started off on Saturday afternoon. You then go to the 5-4 matchup in the AFC. Or if you want to, let's keep it in the order in which these games will be played. So now we shift over to the NFC. And we'll get the 6-3 matchup as our second game on Saturday afternoon, 4:40 Eastern Standard Time on Saturday afternoon. You get the 6-seeded Los Angeles Rams taking on the 3-seeded Seattle Seahawks in a little bit of NFC West family business. If these two teams said they ain't did it, then they ain't did it. But if they did, Well, that's family business. Indianapolis, one more thing to add there, with the win, clinched the playoff spot, eliminating the Miami Dolphins. However, they had a chance to win the division. We'll talk about why a little bit later on in this breakdown. But anyhow, Rams, Seahawks, this game has lost a little bit of its luster. It's a long shot for Jared Goff to play on Saturday after just having surgery a week ago on his thumb. Remember, he hit his thumb on the helmet of a Seattle Seahawks defender in Week 16's big showdown for the division. Broke his thumb, had surgery. The likelihood of him being able to grip a football and be able to play slim to none, meaning they're probably going to have to turn to John Wofford again, who started in Week 17 unimpressively, I may add, but did enough. You know, with this defense, and that's the reason you can't count them out, is I talked about the Colts defense being good enough to carry them and potentially get an upset win. Same here with this Rams football team. They're the best defense in the league. They're not the best defense in the NFC or the NFC West or in the conference. They're the best defense in the league are these Rams. And they showed it on Sunday in Week 17. Now, again, Kyler Murray was dispatched of on the opening possession of the game. So that made life a lot easier for them to close out the Cardinals and eliminate them from postseason contention. However, it was going to be tough for Kyler Murray regardless, because that Rams defense was going to be all over him. And so if there's a reason why the Rams can eliminate Seattle and handle some family business on the road, it's because of that vaunted defense. They won yesterday 18-7 over the Cardinals after, as I mentioned, getting rid of Kyler Murray early on in that game. Remember, Murray was coming into the game with an injury already after having been kicked in the leg whip at the end of that San Francisco game. He was a questionable decision all week long. He did go, and you knew he was going to give it a go, and on the very first possession, he gets rolled up on by a Rams defender that's sacking him, and that was all she wrote. He did ultimately come back into that game in the fourth quarter, but he wasn't going to lead them back. That Rams defense had already gotten lathered up, and they were ready to rock and roll, and the Cardinals, they weren't ready. I told you before the season they were going to just miss out on the postseason. They weren't ready yet, and they did. I look for the Cardinals to be ready next year, though. The question now for them is, will it be with Larry Fitzgerald still around or not? There was a rumor that he had announced his retirement. I haven't heard anything quite yet, but it makes sense if Larry wants to hang it up. This wasn't a great year for Larry. He dealt with COVID-19. He dealt with some injuries. If it ever felt like a year that Larry might be ready to hang it up, it's this year. We'll see what happens there. But as for the Rams, they got it done. They go into the playoffs with a win. They needed that after an ugly two-game skid to finish up against the Jets and the Seahawks. So they needed a win to get that bad taste out of their mouth. Now the question is, do they have enough offensively? Hopefully they'll get a lot of those guys that were on the COVID list, like Cooper Kupp and some of those other guys that ended up on the COVID list for Week 17. Hopefully those guys will be back for this playoff matchup. But unfortunately, they may not have Jared Goff back, and that doesn't bode well for the Goffense in Los Angeles with these Rams. As for the Seahawks, it wasn't pretty for them over the 49ers in Week 17. The Niners had nothing to play for. They didn't have most of their guys starting, and yet these Seahawks struggled mightily. And they had a shot. It's not like they didn't have something to play for. They had a shot at the number 1 seed in the NFC playoffs. Everything fell in place for them to get it. All they needed was for the Packers to lose. The Saints won, which is what they needed. And if they won and the Packers lost to the Bears and they were on the ropes with the Packers, then the Seahawks would have been your number 1 seed and they would have had the first round bye. So it's not like they didn't have incentive to play. And yet we're 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter and they're trailing on the road at San Francisco. What was the score? It was I think that score was 12-16, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 12-16 at that point before Russell Wilson does his magic, throws a fourth down touchdown pass. I think it was third down, might have been third down, might have been fourth, to Tyler Lockett. Just a thing of beauty. So what he does is what Tyler Lockett does. He goes over 1,000 yards for the season does Tyler Lockett. Seahawks have a combination of 2 receivers over 1,000 yards. There are a few of those in the league. If I had to guess, I think Thielen goes over 1,000 in Minnesota. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I know Justin Jefferson set the NFL rookie record for most receiving yards by a rookie wide receiver this season. And unfortunately, still don't think he's going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think that's still going to go to Justin Herbert. Anyway, in that game, DK Metcalf set the Seattle Seahawks franchise record for most receiving yards in a single season. So those guys are playing exceptional football. They get it done 26-23 over the San Francisco 49ers. Get the 3 seed in the NFC playoffs. And that's going to be an interesting matchup because even if Jared Goff doesn't play, that Rams defense is capable of still knocking off the Seattle Seahawks. That'll be your Saturday 4:40 matchup. You get to Saturday night and you get the 5-4 matchup in the NFC. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are your 5 seed. They'll be traveling to Washington to take on the Washington football team, your 4 seed and winners of the NFC East. Obviously, we all know about that outcome, but to quickly recap, Washington in the final game 256 of what was a crazy NFL season that we did not know if we were going to ultimately get to game 256, but we did on time. I may add, on Sunday night, Washington had traveled to Philadelphia, took care of the Eagles 20-14 in what was a sloppy football game. Turnovers galore. The Eagles make a very questionable decision at best to bench Jalen Hurts in favor of Nate Sudfeld, who really came in and couldn't bust a grape. And so that led to a lot of people feeling like the Eagles lost this game purposefully. Maybe they did. We've seen other teams do it around the league. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. At the end of the day, I think the team that deserved to go in the NFC went, and that's Washington. They still had to win the game. And the Eagles, despite what you may think and contrary to popular belief, they did try to win the game. They just didn't put the best players in the game to give them the best chance to win. Not that the players that were out there weren't trying to win the game. So let's just make sure we clarify that. So Washington gets the win, 7-9, wins the division, and they'll host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who had a fight on their hands in Week 17 at home against the Atlanta Falcons. Don't allow the 44-27 final score fool you. This was a close ball game into the fourth quarter. Falcons with the football, with a chance. And again, the Buccaneers made plays down the stretch, as they've done so often this season, to run away from a game that was extremely close. I talked about the Raiders game earlier this season. We talked about the Panthers game the first time around and how that was a close game, and then they ran away and hid. They've done this multiple times this season when games have been really tight and then they run away late and score a barrage of points. And kudos to Tom Brady. Shout out to Tom Brady for 3 straight shovel passes to Antonio Brown to get him his bonus in his contract. And so we saw a couple of teams do that. Russell Wilson went rogue and got one of his players a bonus in his contract. So, and you know, Pete Carroll wasn't happy. They didn't know what was going on in the game on the telecast. Russell Wilson knew what was up, and you love to see it. You know, if I know you need X amount of catches or you need X amount of yards to hit an accelerator in your contract, we're gonna try to get you that bread. You know, you out here working hard, busting your ass, and if you get 1,000 yards or if you get 80 catches on the season, that's another $1 million. We're gonna get you 80. If you came into the game with 72, you need 8, and we're 2 minutes left in the game, and you need 2 catches, we're gonna get you those 2 grabs, bruh. Don't worry, I'm gonna get you your meal. So I love to see these quarterbacks taking care of their receivers. We saw Russell Wilson and Tom Brady both do that in their respective games. And so the Buccaneers take care of the Atlanta Falcons. They come in playing some really good football, you know, winners of about 5 or 6 straight. You know, they hit that bye week and they were a little sketchy, but since they've come off the bye, they've been playing exceptional football, and they've been scoring a bunch of points, which is why no one is giving Washington a chance in this game. We'll have plenty of time to kind of dissect and talk about this football game. But they're red hot, are these Buccaneers. You know, 44 this week. They scored 40 last week against Detroit. The week before that, let's see what they scored in Week 15. In Week 15, they scored 31 against Atlanta. In week 14, they scored 26 against Minnesota. So they've been really hot of late these last 3 weeks. 31, 40, 47, and 44. So they can score. We know that. They can score with the best of them. And they had already clinched in week 16, but now they know their opponent now in Washington. And that will be the nightcapper on Saturday night. As we get to the Sunday slate of games, we start with the 1:05 kick on Sunday afternoon to get things started on Sunday. As you get the fifth seeded Baltimore Ravens against the fourth seeded Tennessee Titans. The AFC South champion Tennessee Titans. Should be a fantastic game. If you remember, this is a rematch of last year's divisional round matchup in which the Tennessee Titans knocked off the Ravens, who were coming off of their first round bye, and they went to Baltimore and spanked them 28-12. Derrick Henry ran roughshod over that Baltimore Ravens defense, and the Titans would ultimately go on and play in the AFC Championship after that victory. Can they do it again? Tables are turned this time around. Titans are the home team. They may be favored in this game. I can tell you this, the Titans defensively right now are struggling. And so that's an understatement. They give up 38 points to Deshaun Watson and company. And they were down in this game multiple times where it looked like they were on the ropes and could have lost this football game. At one point, they were down in this game 31-28. They were down in this game where the Tennessee Titans, and this is late in the fourth quarter, they were down 31-28. They scored the touchdown to take the lead and go up 35-31. Deshaun Watson gets back on his horse, takes his team back down the field. They take the lead 38-35 with, just over 3 or 4 minutes left in the game. And you're thinking, man, Tennessee's on the ropes. If they lose this game, they were still in the playoffs. They still were going to be in the postseason, but they would have lost the division to Indianapolis, who had already beaten Jacksonville just, 30 minutes earlier. So the division was on the line, and it's a massive difference because look at the difference. You go from the 3 seed to the 7 seed, and you would have had to play Buffalo. Totally did. They don't want any parts of Buffalo. They smoked Buffalo earlier this season. They didn't want any parts of the Bills. With the way that they're playing defense in Tennessee right now, the Bills would have put up 50 on them. They didn't want any parts of that. So in their mind, they needed to win this division, get the home playoff game, and they much rather go after Baltimore to give them a chance than to go after Buffalo in the first round on the road. So this is a big game. And Ryan Tannehill pulls it out. They run it down the field. Derrick Henry came into the game needing 223 yards to eclipse 2,000 on the season. He went for 250 yards in this game. He was utterly 255. He was ridiculous in this game, was Derrick Henry, man. I mean, just phenomenal. It was fun to watch. And I congratulated him on Twitter for joining the 2,000-yard rush club. It's an elite group. Only 7 members. Now, scoot over, make space. Now there's 8 members of that prestigious and elite group as Derrick Henry adds his name to that list. He was fantastic. Ryan Tannehill was fantastic. And the throw, as a matter of fact, I think I had it wrong. I think the score was 35. It was 38-35 the other way around. The Titans had taken the lead, and Watson took his team down the field. I thought they were going to score a touchdown. They ultimately had to settle for a field goal, tied the game up at 38. Looked like it was going to overtime. And then Ryan Tannehill finds A.J. Brown. My God, what a throw that was. For a 52-yard gain, put them in field goal range. What a catch by Brown. What a throw by Tannehill. And their new kicker, remember, they've had kicking issues all season long with Stephen Gostkowski. He was out. They had Sam Sloman, the ex-Los Angeles Ram rookie kicker, kicking for them. And the Texans call a timeout initially. So he kicks the first one. He splits the uprights. Perfect kick. And as you would know it, every time, the second one, he doinks the upright, but it actually kicks in and they win this football game 41-38 as they survive the Texans, win the AFC South, and they'll host the Baltimore Ravens, who did exactly what I told you they were going to do some 6 weeks ago, which is run the table, win 5 straight, and get into the postseason. And they had the path of least resistance. The teams that they played down the stretch after they got past Cleveland on that Monday night, which was a dandy. I think it was the best game of the 2020 NFL season. After they got past the Browns, there was little to no resistance left in the way of them getting in the playoffs. The Cowboys and the Giants and the Bengals, you knew they were going to take care of every single one of those teams left. And they didn't waste any time with Cincinnati. The Bengals, who had been playing inspired ball the last couple of weeks, beat Pittsburgh, won last week again against Houston. They didn't have any of that shit this week. They jumped on these boys early and often. This thing was over by halftime. They win this one 38-3, and they clinch a playoff berth with the win, get the 5 seed, and they now have a date with the Tennessee Titans in a rematch of the AFC divisional round playoff game from a season ago. You get to the 4:40 matchup on Sunday, and that's going to feature the last matchup of the NFC, and that's the 7-2 matchup. 7-seeded Chicago Bears, the Bears, who clinched a playoff berth despite losing on Sunday, will go to New Orleans to take on the 2nd-seeded New Orleans Saints. So this will be on Sunday at 4:40. The Bears put up a valiant effort against Green Bay. The score doesn't really indicate how close this game was. 35-16 is the final score in this ball game, but this game was 20-16 for the absolute longest time. When I tell you that this score was 20-16 for about what felt like a quarter and a half, the Bears had every opportunity to win this football game and simply could not get it done. Got to credit their defense for holding down Mitchell Trubisky and what was a red-hot Bears offense coming in. You don't believe me? Let's look at the numbers. Bears in Week 16 scored 41 against Jacksonville. Bears in Week 15 scored 33 against Minnesota. Bears in Week 14 scored 36 against Houston. So this was a Bears offense that hadn't scored less than 30 in almost a month. And so the Packers had some work to do. They got it done. And Mitchell Trubisky, a bad interception late, but he gave him a shot. You know, Mitchell Trubisky and that offense, this is gonna be a really good matchup. Like, again, I've talked about all these matchups, and the Bears defensively have enough to really offset what is a potent Saints offense with Kamara and company. And they'll have Michael Thomas back. He was placed on IR. This is the last week of that. He'll be ready for the postseason. And that Bears defense is good enough to really make this an interesting game. I can't wait to watch this one as well. But the Bears back their way into the postseason at 8-8. No one's crying over them backing their way in. The Bears aren't giving back this playoff berth. They're happy to be in, and everyone's 0-0 now. They've got a shot on the road against the 2nd-seeded Saints, who went to Carolina and disposed of the Panthers 33-7. They made this look relatively easy. It was close early, but they pulled away late and really disposed of the Panthers. And you know, this Saints team quietly, no one's really talking Saints. You know, it's amazing. You know, they've been putting up some points. 33 this week. You know, with a bunch of ragtag guys in a meaningless game. 52 last week against Minnesota on Christmas night. In Week 15, they put up 29 in a loss to Kansas City by 3. So, you know, I think that loss to Philadelphia really soured a lot of people on New Orleans, but maybe this is the year. Nobody's really expecting anything from New Orleans. You know, maybe this is the year that they finally put it together and make a trip and a run to the Super Bowl. We'll see. They got a shot with Chicago coming into town, but it won't be easy. Trust me when I tell you that this Saints team will have a fight on their hands, and we'll see if they're able to get it done or not. They should have Alvin Kamara off the COVID-19 list as well for that ball game. Should be a lot of fun. And then finally, the nightcapper on Sunday in the final game of Wildcard Weekend resides in the AFC North division, a little bit of family business there. If these two teams say they ain't did it, then they ain't did it. But if they did, well, this is going to be some extra special AFC North family business. You know how the family do it. 6-seeded Cleveland Browns in the playoffs for the first time since 2003, taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. This will be the end of a trilogy this year. Third time these two teams will meet. Second time in a row in as many weeks these two teams will meet. This is the equivalent of an NBA home and home. Played each other in week 17 in Cleveland. Now going to travel just across the river to Pittsburgh, and they're going to do battle once again. This game's going to look significantly different than the Week 17 matchup, which featured no Ben Roethlisberger and a bunch of other integral parts for the Steelers. Browns needed the game. That's where we start. In order to clinch a playoff berth, they needed to win. With a loss, they would be out, and the Miami Dolphins would then be in. So they had to have it. They couldn't afford to rest their starters. They needed to play and play to win. And that they did. Now, it was not easy. Steelers did not make it easy on them. They jumped out early on this Steelers team, thought they were going to run away with this thing and hide. But the Steelers made a game of it. The Browns ultimately were able to hold on 24-22 with the win. They clinched the 6th seed, and they will be hosting, or they will be on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers, the 3-seeded Pittsburgh Steelers, who had Ben Roethlisberger on rest duty in week 17, so Mason Rudolph got the call, and they didn't play a lot of their guys out there, and as I mentioned already, they're going to be a much different team in Wildcard Weekend, but we'll see. I think Cleveland is actually game. I think they can beat this Steelers football team. We'll see. We'll see what happens in that game, but it's family business, so you know what it is already. So that's the playoff picture in a nutshell. Everybody that had a chance to make it pretty much went out and took care of business, with the exception of Miami and Arizona. But you knew somebody was going to end up losing out as a double-digit winner in 2020, especially in the AFC. You knew somebody was going to win 10, 11 games and miss out, and that team happened to be Miami on the AFC side of the bracket. And for the Cardinals, it was a good season, but not good enough. You know, they that loss to San Francisco, family business, you know how it goes in week 16, had to come back and bite them, and it did, you know, and it really did. They would have been in if they would have found some way at home to beat San Francisco, but they didn't. And so they end up losing out on the 7th seed and the final spot in the NFC playoffs. I just want to make mention of a couple of these games. Had a lot of football that I was able to digest yesterday. The Giants and the Cowboys game was a big one. Winner of that game was going to be watching very intently the Sunday night game to see if Philadelphia could upset Washington. Obviously, that didn't happen, but the Giants were able to take care of Dallas 23-19 in what was a sloppy game as well. Again, these NFC East games were very sloppy on Sunday. The Giants were able to prevail. The Cowboys just took too long to get started on offense. Too many mistakes, but the Giants made mistakes that gave Dallas opportunities. The Cowboys had opportunities late, and they pissed it away to the Giants. This was a really sloppy game, but the Giants prevailed. My biggest issue with the Giants trying to get in is they just don't have enough offense, and it's like the pot calling the kettle black with our quarterback situation. We're not much better, but I just don't see the Giants being able to outscore anybody. And their defense, while it's good, it's not dynamic. They don't create turnovers, and they don't really change the game with their defense. Their defense just stops you from scoring a bunch of points. But if their offense isn't going to score very many points, what difference does it make? At least with Washington's defense, they can create turnovers that can lead to points. The Giants are more of a bend but don't break type of defense. So at the end of the day, Giants got it done, but it wasn't enough. And then I just wanted to make mention of this Minnesota-Detroit game. What an awful call in this game that really cost the Lions this game. Now, it helped me. I won my winners and losers league for the second straight year. Thank you. The champ is here. The champ is here. I did it again. So, again, if y'all want some, come get some. All right? I proved once again that nobody knows the league better than me. And so I won it by 4 total games. I went into week 17 up 1, came out of week 17 up 4. I'm over here with my bruh man math. 4. Up 4 games in the standings to finish up this season. Really proud of myself, man. I did a hell of a job, and this was a tough year to navigate. And I thought I did a tremendous job of doing that. But that being said, I had Minnesota, so it did benefit me. But what an awful call. They got to stop this shit, man. It was 4th down and goal from like the 4-yard line. Vikings decide to go for it. They blitz Kirk Cousins before he even has a chance to really survey the field. They got a blitz and safety on his ass. And the safety hits him. Might have been a cornerback. Hits him. It's as good, clean, and wholesome a hit as you'll get from a blitzing defender. He doesn't hit him with his helmet. He doesn't spear him in his back. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't put his body weight on him. Nothing. None of that. He hits him. He rolls over. It's a turnover on downs. Big stop for this Lions defense. They're probably going to win this game because of that stop. You know what the official said? And this guy is horrible. He is just the worst. You know what this guy said? I thought he barrel rolled on the quarterback. What? What did you just say? You thought he did what? Seriously, dude? Like I'm not even a Lions. I wanted to smack him. I really did. And he's a brother. So I want the brothers to succeed. He's awful. This guy is awful as a head official. And he was the one that threw the flag. Blasphemy. The Vikings get a fresh set of downs. They run it in for a touchdown. They ultimately win this game 37-35. It was terrible. Anyway, I digress. Let's finish this show up with what I like to call garbage time. So, had a chance to look at the draft order for the non-playoff teams. And I want to run through this quickly, and then I'm going to talk about something that has really irked me over the last 24 hours. So, the draft order 1 through 18 looks as such. The Jaguars, as we all know, clinched the number 1 overall pick a couple of weeks back. So they'll be drafting number 1 overall. More likely than not, they'll be drafting Trevor Lawrence. 2nd overall belongs to the Jets. And we think they're going to do one of 2 things. We already discussed this. They're either going to hold on to Sam Darnold and trade the number 2 pick for King's ransom to try to speed up the process, get him more weaponry, running back, couple of receivers, tight end, whatever may have you. Or they're going to trade Sam Darnold, which will net them some draft capital in its own right. And they're going to draft, more likely than not, a quarterback. Who that quarterback will be, hard to say, but all signs point to Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields. 3rd overall, how nice is this? The Miami Dolphins, by virtue of the Texans in the Laramie Tunsil trade, are the 3rd overall pick. They finished with 10 wins and just outside the playoffs. And they're going to have the 3rd pick overall in the draft. Must be nice. Falcons are 4th overall in this draft, followed by the Bengals, who round out the top 5 at number 5. 6 are the Philadelphia Eagles, which is why they didn't want to win last night. We'll talk about that in a little bit. 7 are the Lions. All right. 8 are the Carolina Panthers. 9 are the Denver Broncos. 10 are the Dallas Cowboys to round out the top 10. Giants come in at number 11. So for all you Washington fans out there that wanted to lose to better your draft position, you would have been somewhere in that 10-11 space. Okay? Just so you know. Great. Just good enough to miss out on the playoffs, but not bad enough to get in the top 10. Or in the top 10. 49ers, 12th. Chargers, 13th. Vikings, 14th. 15th, the New England Patriots. 16th, the Arizona Cardinals. 17th, the Las Vegas Raiders. And 18th are the Miami Dolphins. Yet again. So the Dolphins are sitting pretty. If you thought that they did a really good job last year of drafting and speeding up the process, they got a chance to do it all over again this year with more draft capital and even better draft capital than they had a year ago. They weren't as high as 3 last year. I think their first pick came at like 5 or 6 last year. So they're sitting even prettier this year, are the Miami Dolphins. So with that said, I want to talk about the Eagles last night and all the backlash that they've gotten. In all of my years, I haven't seen anything quite like this before. This is ridiculous. Shut up. Okay? Let me be the first, if someone hasn't already told you, let me be the first to tell you to shut the hell up. Here's why. What's the difference? Somebody please explain to me what the difference between what the Eagles did last night and what the Jacksonville Jaguars have been doing since about October, November. Please somebody explain to me the difference. And let's take it a step further. What they did in week 17 is the same goddamn scenario. Same exact goddamn scenario. Okay? So spare me. Okay? Jacksonville. So let's talk about the Eagles first. The Eagles and their head coach, who is going to be around. It's not like Jacksonville with a head coach that was helping the organization, even though he wasn't going to be around to reap the benefits. At least Doug Peterson in Philadelphia is like, hey, I got a chance to potentially draft a guy that I think can help me win and keep my job next year. I don't know how they feel about Jalen Hurts. Looks like they feel like he's a backup, honestly speaking. But we'll see. They're sitting at the 6th pick. A win would have put them at 5 wins. And not only would it put them at 5 wins, they would have leapfrogged every single one of these 5-win teams. So that means they would have leapfrogged Lions, Panthers, and Broncos, and they would have been the 9th pick in the draft. It's a big difference between 6 and 9, just so you know, because at 6, you could still end up with Zach Wilson if he tickles your fancy. At 9, you're not getting Zach Wilson unless you trade up. Point blank, end of discussion. Now, somebody could leapfrog you. The Falcons could say, hey, I want a quarterback. I'll take Zach Wilson. Or they could say, hey, I don't want Zach Wilson, but somebody else does. So I'll move back. That could happen. But if they just want to stand pat in the Eagles, with Howie Roseman over the years has shown you they don't give a shit about draft picks. They don't care about value. They don't care about their 2nd or their 3rd. They'll give all of that shit up if they think they can get a guy that can come in and be the future of their franchise at the quarterback position, and that's what they're after. Howie Roseman has showed you he'll have a 4 or 5 player draft and be done. He'll go in, get bread, egg, cheese, milk, and get out. He's done that plenty of times. You know, in that Dallas Goedert draft, drafted 4 guys. He traded away his 1st round pick so he can move back, and he traded away like all the rest of the picks in that draft. They didn't have a 1st rounder because of what they did the year before to get Carson Wentz. And he said, you know what? I don't give a shit that we already don't have a lot of picks in this draft. I'll trade up to get in front of Dallas to get Dallas Goedert, and now I only got 3 or 4 picks in the draft. So what? Shoot me. So he's shown you already that draft picks don't matter to him. If they think they can get their guy, just like they did 3 years ago or 4 years ago, when they traded up for Carson Wentz, they'll do it again. So it's easier to trade up from 6 to get to, say, 4 than it is from 9 to 4. So anyway, Doug Peterson made a business decision last night. We see teams do it all the time. Now, was his a little bit more overt and egregious? And let's take it a step further. The reason people are outraged is because you had 2 teams playing to have an opportunity to watch the Sunday night game to have a shot. If this game were played on a Sunday afternoon in obscurity with nobody watching, then you might have had a few fans complaining, but Giants players and fans wouldn't have been bitching and complaining, and Chris Collinsworth wouldn't have been sitting there wetting his pants. Oh my God, I can't believe that they're doing this, and I'll just say this, if this were the Cowboys, oh my God. You wouldn't have had all of that hoopla. But it just happened to be the Sunday night game, nationally televised, final game of the season, all eyes on that game, and so a lot was made of it. But let's talk about Jacksonville for a second. What's the difference between what the Eagles did in one game that they were out of, that wasn't going to help them at all, and only thing that was going to help them was a loss? Let's talk about what Jacksonville did and has done all this season. Gardner Minshew got injured early in the season. He had fractured his thumb, okay? Fractured his hand, whatever. he thought he bruised it. So he didn't tell the organization until it got to the point where he really couldn't grip the football and he knew something was more wrong than just a bruise. X-rays showed that he had a broken finger. He had to have surgery. He was out for a little while. Gardner Minshew, all he had to do was miss 3 games. He could have come back after those 3 games. You know what the Jacksonville Jaguars said? No. You're healthy, but we're going to give Jake Luton a chance, the rookie out of Oregon State. You give him a chance. Oh, Jake Luton stunk. You know what they said after that? Hey, we know you're healthy, Gardner, but let's try out Mike Glennon. Let's see what old Longneck has. Mike Glennon stinks, and we all know it. And you know, I saw the craziest thing. Mike Glennon has been on 3 teams now that have had the number 1 pick in the draft. Isn't that crazy? Like, Mike Glennon has been on 3 teams that have ended up with the number 1 pick, and every year that team ended up with the number 1 pick, he started in that season for that team. Unbelievable. Anyway, Mike Glennon stinks. We all know it. Okay? The Jaguars knew it. You know what they continued to do? Trot out Mike Glennon, despite knowing that Gardner Minshew could win them football games. Gardner Minshew is begging head coach Doug Marrone to put him back in the starting lineup, and he refuses. So after the Jaguars clinched the number 1 overall pick, you know what the Jags could have done to keep the integrity of the game? You know what they could have done? You already got the number 1 pick. You already achieved your goal of getting the number 1 pick. You got nothing to lose now. You know what they could have done? They could have started Gardner Minshew in week 17. You know what they decided to do? They started Mike Glennon instead. Don't talk to me about what the Eagles, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. The Jaguars have been doing it all season long. We've talked about it on this podcast. If you want to see tanking one-on-one, go see the Jaguars this season. That's bullshit what they've done. And then in week 17, with the Colts having a chance to clinch the division, and if they lose, they're out. You don't think the Dolphins would have appreciated if they would have started and played Gardner Minshew to give them a chance to make the postseason? You don't think the Dolphins would have appreciated if Gardner Minshew was out there instead of goddamn Mike Glennon? I don't hear anybody bitching and complaining about what the Jaguars did. It's a double standard. So if you're bitching about what the Eagles did, shut the hell up. Unless you're talking about what the Jags have been doing all season long, I don't want to hear your shit. And I'll take it a step further. If you want to get in the playoffs, Giants fans and all of those Giants apologists and the integrity of the game guys, win more than 6 goddamn games. A wise man once told me, you want something done, you better do it yourself. When you start relying on other people to do your dirty work for you, these types of things can happen. And guess what? I couldn't think of a better team and organization that this shit could have happened to than the New York Giants, because I can't stand the Mayors. We wouldn't have had the salary cap penalty if it weren't for those bastards. So, you know what? This feels like poetic justice. I don't have a problem with the Giants fan base. Not one bit. Love those guys, as a matter of fact. And they've been great sports about it. Okay? Love the Giant fan base. But that organization can kiss my ass. Both lips. Okay? So I loved hearing Giants players, Golden Tate. Well, maybe the Eagles hate us more than they hate Washington. No. They just love themselves more than they hate you. That's all. This ain't got nothing to do with you. That's the problem. Everybody wants to make it about the Giants. To hell with the Giants. You won 6 games. You lost 10 games. Go sit your ass down somewhere. What are you bitching about? You won 6 games. Nobody want to hear from your ass. Eli Manning bitching. Oh my God. That's why we hate the Eagles. And Fletcher Cox laughed and said, that's why we hate y'all. Go take this L and go sit your ass down somewhere. Ain't nobody out here doing favors for you. We don't owe you nothing. We don't owe you a damn thing. We owe it to ourselves to make sure that we give ourselves the best chance moving forward as an organization. You know what that does? That means losing and ending up with the 6th pick, not winning and ending up with the 9th pick. Jacksonville's been doing it all season long. Nobody's batting an eye. Jacksonville's been tanking since week 9. Gardner Minshew has been healthy since like week 11. Ain't nobody said a damn thing to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I don't want to hear this shit. We won the division fair and square. You don't like it? Win more games. And that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. I thank you for joining me on the 126th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. If you haven't already done so, I just got one request. I lied. 3 requests. Okay? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on that notification bell. And also hit that like button if you haven't already done that. We at 94 likes. It's 200 of you out there. 250 to be exact. Hit the like button if you haven't already done so, man. It's a new year. It's 2021. Start blessing folks out here, man. Damn, it ain't 2020 no more. Don't have that hate in your heart no more. Hit the like button. And if you haven't hit that sub button, what are we doing? What are we doing? Anyway, I thank you guys for joining me. We'll be back on Wednesday on the Louie T Network podcast. Well, I'll open up the floor to you guys, and we'll have a discussion about whatever we can talk about whatever you like. Yeah, so get your questions ready for our social media maneuvers on Wednesday. Looking forward to that. But in the meantime, and we'll see if anything happens with these coaching vacancies, these GM vacancies, and all of the things in between. We'll be keeping tabs on that, and we'll talk about anything that happens, and we'll update it on Wednesday's show. So for that, it's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me. Until next time, I'm your man Louie T, signing off. This has been the Louie T Network podcast. See you guys next time. Have a good one. Louie T.